We are going to be covering a very interesting topic called governing artificial intelligence, specific to privacy in this ASEAN region.
My name is Sang Hao. I am the Deputy Director from the AI Governance team in Infocom Media Development Authority. If you have come across some of the publications from us, like Model AI Governance Framework or the Compendium of Use Cases, these are actually efforts from my department.
Then we have Teng Chuan Hyang. He's the founder and managing partner of Interactive, and more importantly, he's the chairman of ERAI, that stands for Ethical and Responsible Use of AI.
So my interest in AI is really the ethical and responsible use of AI. The reason is because I think AI is going to dominate the next century, or if not the next decade.
And we have Dr. David Bodov, and he is our AI expert here all the way from Israel. Let's do a quick poll. An AI robot that's been given citizenship, like in any country, a country citizenship. An AI robot which looks exactly like human being from a muscular skeletal or skeleton system perspective. Or how about an AI robot that can read owners' emotions? It can read your emotions and do something here.
Why use the term artificial intelligence? These three capabilities make the robot artificially intelligent. In short, AI provides machines with the capability to adapt, reason, and provide solutions. Machine learning provides a machine with the capability to learn from data and experience through algorithms. Deep learning does this learning through ways inspired by the human brain. This means through deep learning, data and patterns can be better perceived.
Pepper's creators say it can respond to changes in a person's voice, even tell jokes to make them laugh.
Emotion of the people or fluctuation of emotion can be detected, for instance, by their expression and the tension in their voice.
We're going to be discussing certain ethical issues. This is actually a mobile app.
I really felt quite distressed not receiving an invitation.
So it's like it doesn't end in like a bluff, right? Because it creates a low pressure zone behind the mirror, and so you'd have a kind of almost like a cone behind the mirror, or blend it with the body or something like that.
Okay. I'm Gax.
As our panel of speakers talk about the AI ethical principles and governance frameworks, these are the 4 universal ethical principles. We talked about all the common users. Maybe, David, I could ask you, if that's the case, then what do you see are the issues, the main issues or ethical dilemmas, especially for you, David, as an AI programmer, as an AI expert?
The problem now is that machine learning and artificial intelligence takes that little bit of information you shared about yourself, and right away, I can predict your future. So the concern has shifted from the actual pieces of information that you put in. Is it a use that's very different from, we call category jumping. I'm not aware how it's going to be used, and it's used in a very sensitive way, and it's used in another completely different domain, and they can't themselves even explain themselves to me. There's red flags there. So this, I think, is the sort of concrete. Now, we're in these areas now. This is not science fiction. This is right now.
It's not just about personal data and about data security issues. It's about predictive analysis and using that data for unexpected users, right? And it's colored further with biasness, right, of the programmer and all of that.
And you are using an AI system. How do I know that your AI system is safe? And the decisions made by the AI, will it result in unfair discrimination of me? If anything goes wrong, is there any accountability? And then can I hold somebody responsible? Good governance helps businesses to address these common concerns and then reduce the risk of bad outcomes of AI beyond just compliance. It's not about complying with rules, but see it as a competitive advantage in building good products, in building good practices. Retail, e-commerce, maybe advertising, and actually manufacturing too. So why do I highlight these industries? Because they actually have certain characteristics. Number one, they are data rich and they are data ready. So they actually have a large amount of data that is machine readable. And then they actually have existing practice to derive insights from the data, and they actually look to using data to optimize through automation. So I think that these factors at play makes these industries most ready to adopt AI.
Often when people are acquiring an AI solution, if there's one standout issue there, they don't want to think about what the contract should be, but there's actually quite a lot of other things going on. Intellectual property is always a big thing. Who owns it? Who licenses it? How's that all going to work?
They are thrilled by the innovation, but they forget about the contractual risks and a whole bunch of factors that you have just mentioned.
Let me frame my answer around a decision that was issued just last week by the Privacy Commissioner in Australia after it did a joint study with the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK. So this was about Clearview AI, as you see here. The Privacy Commission in Australia made a few findings. The first one was that it was collecting biometric personal data without the consent of individuals. It was just scraping them off the websites. Biometric data is sensitive in many countries. The second finding was that it was collecting personal data by unfair means. And it was mostly unfair because it wasn't notifying people about what it was doing. The final finding was that Clearview AI was not taking reasonable steps to ensure that the personal data that it disclosed was accurate, having regard to the purpose of disclosure.
This example here, we have the breach with the consent obligation, the notification obligation, the accuracy obligation, and the retention limitation obligation.
The principles behind all these AI ethics are consistent with data protection. You must have proper data accountability practices. For example, provenance, having strategy to only retain sufficient data for appropriate duration for traceability and to meet regulatory requirements. Similarly, in the AI governance framework, another principle that is very similar to data protection is transparency. These are just a few examples on data protection. The model framework actually goes beyond data protection.
I believe Singapore is one of the first in the world, right, to actually push a model framework. Yeah.
So there are 4 areas to consider in developing a responsible AI. The framework that we have developed is actually aligned with the OECD guidelines as well as the EU guideline as well as recommendations.
Thoughts on the usefulness of such frameworks and possibly how you can guide the AI programmer?
That framework sounds amazing. There's all kinds of applications and companies that are in more gray areas. You need people to want to adhere to the framework. And the forces that are going to cause companies to want to adhere to the framework, it's either market forces, either educating people to know what's going on. The regulators, I would think, would need to complement the frameworks with sort of carrots and sticks, both educating the public so that there is pressure bottom up, as well as whatever enforcement mechanisms. There's a profit motive there. And sometimes security, people will justify anything.
This word called minimized bias, because you got to create automated decision-making algorithms. And there's this sense of biasness, right?
We bring it into context of culture, legal system. And I think culture is an important thing. And different aspects of society have a different culture. Culture is important in the context of applying AI as well, aside from just legalistic aspect of it. So we need to think through these questions about algorithm and what the algorithm might lead us to. Then transparency is very tricky because AI is opaque. Ethics relates to a human free agency. Accountability must be pointing to a person, never to an equipment or to a machine. What we do is to bridge the gap between the technical jargon, the complexity of AI with the public. We take the framework of NDA, we translate it to what it means to you as an individual on the street.
We've seen 2 kinds of framework, the AI trust framework, and of course, we also saw the model AI governance framework. Both of these frameworks give everyone a roadmap. Do you think there will eventually be regulations, now we have for data protection, but regulations on the responsible use of AI? The lines are being blurred between AI and privacy. What tips do you have, especially for companies going to implement AI? And bearing in mind, the DPOs are called in to prevent that misuse of personal data.
First thing that you do, you go register for a course and you understand a bit more about how AI and data privacy are linked together. These are things that takes time and you need to get educated about it. Think about the ethical boundaries. Set up a task force, set up a committee, people who have a bit more knowledge about this, consult the people who have practiced it, done it. What are the ethical boundaries in the area that you're doing?
How do you deal with that? You've got a real communication issue between the DPO, who typically doesn't have a very technical background, and people who've been doing technical stuff for so long that they don't understand why somebody doesn't understand.
You are also deep in AI. So what are a few words that you like to share with the DPOs or the data protection professionals here?
The uses are going to be tricky enough or category jumping or something that you're within the framework of data privacy and protection, but somehow you're still doing something that feels wrong. Right now, we can get away with DPOs just knowing about data and using data-oriented frameworks. I think that's going to break at some point, and we're going to need something different. In the long run, companies want frameworks. Most people are good people. They want a framework. They just want a level playing field. That's the answer to the profit motive.
Many jurisdictions in the world are looking into regulations, enacting laws. So EU is one example. China and US, to certain extents, they are trying to put up some regulations about AI. In Singapore, currently, it is still the carrots. So we are doing voluntary guidance. Our sector's regulators are also putting out frameworks. Our Monetary Authority of Singapore has got framework. It's called FEED principle, fairness, ethics, transparency, and accountability. This is for the financial sector. Our healthcare regulator has also put up healthcare guidelines on AI in healthcare. Singapore is now working on a governance testing framework for AI systems. This is basically a test. If you claim that your AI system is performing this level of performance, and it is an attestation to validate that your system indeed performs at that level. This will add value to companies who are implementing AI governance. In fact, we have a very interesting example. The model framework, together with the implementation and self-assessment guide, was implemented by the Darwin local government. I'm beginning to see that they are actually platform developers who are trying to build AI ethics into their platform. As you develop on their platform, certain aspects of ethics, for example, data integrity, provenance, lineage, or even testing for bias, are actually built into the platform.
Have you seen any good examples of the board of directors' involvement? DPOs are now asking, I know there are issues in AI. What are some of the general privacy questions they should be asking?
It should be very much a bifurcated decision. The DPO, the engineer says these are things that can be done. The board, or by delegation to the CEO, is going to say, these are our ethical principles. We'll make the decision about what should be done. And by the way, we'll give you some frameworks to think about this. In data protection, we talk about a data protection steering committee. Maybe you need an ethics committee. Should I link this or should I not? I can as an engineer. What's your ethical decision? What am I answering to the board for on this?
If you're enjoying this, you will hear more from Chuan, more from me. We're going to go into the details and we'll be talking about the model AI governance framework from IMDA. We're going to go into it and look at it from an operational perspective. So join us, and what we'll be covering here, as you can see, are all the compliance requirements, but it's important for everyone to know the ethical principles based on the AI governance. We're going to go into all the basics of ethics, business ethics, and then we transition to data ethics and AI. Because if you don't understand the basics, you don't even know what business ethics is. We're going to be also explaining the basics of artificial intelligence, because if you want to understand the framework, you need to know basics. We'll be covering this step by step, and the takeaway, hopefully you have a bunch of operational knowledge. And here's the good news. We've got a hands-on case study. I think Chuan has put together some very interesting, fun exercises, and you don't have to be technical. So this is a course designed for the legal compliance folks, designed for data protection officers. You got your 90% funding for SMEs. I hope that everyone walks away with something useful. If you want to know more, just 2 days, you learn about all the important operational issues, learn about the governance framework. Thank you so much, everyone.
For more data protection resources, visit www.dpaxnetwork.org, the Data Protection Excellence Network, and sign up for free as a member to have full access to all content. Do also like and follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn if you found this useful.